Koko, come in! Hello, sweetheart! Hello, darling! Mwah! Bye-bye! Well, that was nonsense, wasn't it? But that's good because today I'm reviewing But It's So Silly, a cross-cultural collage of nonsense, poetry, nonsense, nonsense play and poetry. And it's heavy on the play, I would say, and, well, on the poetry. And I decided to add my own nonsense to it. This is by JonArno Lawson, 2017 book, hot off the presses. Oh, we're in 2018 now. It's old news, I guess. And it's a book. It's, what is it? A grab bag, amorphous game and rhyme gathering project of Lawson. He also calls it a father's memoir shaped around children's games and rhymes. Very kind of sneaky. You can see little dots of his life, of all his family throughout the book, where he's going through sort of all the cultures. It's not a scholarly book. I think the collage was a good word when I came across it in the library. They had it out on the "you might find this interesting" shelf. Those cunning little curator people caught my attention, and I think it was the word collage because it's like, okay, this isn't going to be a dry let's pull the wings off of play and stab nonsense onto the page and tax on, get its taxonomy right. No, this is definitely very anecdotal. The sources are of his work are like the fellow parents. He's a Toronto writer, so this is the people that he met on the playground in his own things, asking them about, like, well, what did your parents do? It's cross-cultural, so that's the whole, so many different peoples around the world coming to Toronto, and him being interested in, oh, so what did your parents do? What games, what rhymes, what poetry did you learn as a child, and what kind of games did you play? And so he gathered this stuff for like about 10 years, and this book has a wonderful feel of being kind of lived in, of this is something that he's been interested in all this time. And I think that enthusiasm and just you can tell he's been thinking about this for a lot of the time. I think I find many of the most enjoyable parts is him just sort of kind of, thinking about various aspects, how it's affected his life, how it's such a deep thing in us all. There's one very touching story in here of his father losing the power of speech due to a stroke, and his brother coming in and taking his hand and like very almost like just instinctively starting to do the A B C D E F G song, and that drawing his father back out, and him describing it as like someone had lowered a ladder down and allowed him to pull himself back out. And whether that was the warmth and the empathy that his brother showed, or whether that was just going to happen regardless, or whether there is just something kind of, that kind of the rhythm and the rhyme, and how much that is so core to how we learn language and stuff like that. Yeah, and that's a part of the book is very much like, oh, well, it's like, like all this stuff that we do with our children, other than it being, fun and just joyful, it's just like how it teaches our children, how it teaches ourselves, how we reconnect with creativity by playing, whether it's with children or just, playing as adults with each other, is just sort of that wonderful, wonderful examination within this book. Just a blank page here. So, I'm not a parent, but I've been fascinated. We'll have to see if I messed up my eye line. I always have this here to point me to the right place. I'm not a parent, but I'm fascinated by, like, the uses of play of kids and adults and the cultural differences. He definitely goes through a lot of the different cultures of the world in a very unscientific way. This is, from his talking to parents, talking to fellow poets. He's a poet and a children's author, so he's got his kind of contacts that way. So finding people that way and what their stories are of the poetry and the play that they grew up with. And I'm also just like interested in, well, how do I let play and creativity into my own life, just as a way of, I'd like to enhance it. And just in my writing, in my creative pursuits, but also just in my interactions at work. I work with special needs people, and I'm often kind of the standoffish kind of guy, and like, how to loosen up, sort of in a way, and reconnect with sort of maybe that youthful enthusiasm would be a really nice thing. And it takes me a while to just relax with people, and yeah, I thought this book was definitely a good way of me kind of living with it and mulling it over. I think, there's a lot of nonfiction books where I think what you bring to it is almost as important as the book itself. And this book, I give the book credit because it gave me a space to kind of play with nonsense and poetry. Kind of the downsides in the book, or the limitations of the book, are yes, there's a lot of cross-cultural. There's a lot of different cultures in here, and he includes a lot of translations, but most of the translations fell short. The thing at the beginning, the Koko come in, that to me was like one of the few rare ones of like, oh, this is from a South African, Botswanan kind of tradition of a thing, and there's a whole game with it, which I of course didn't even try. I enjoyed the exuberance I could feel in this, but there's a lot of them I just couldn't feel the exuberance. I couldn't feel the rhyme, the rhythm. It dropped out. And I mean, he says at the beginning, it's so hard to communicate this on the page, and he recommended some websites and stuff like that to look at this stuff to get a kind of a feel of it. But it's one of these. It was frustrating because you could see myself kind of looking through the bars, but not really getting in touch with that. So there's a lot of it in here, but a lot of it just like, yeah, it's here, but it was parts that I sort of skimmed over, and maybe that's me needing to bring more effort into it, but that was what it was. I think there's just a thing of like, that's the cultural divide, and there's things that we can learn from other cultures, but there's also things that we can only just glancingly get an idea, whereas something like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, that just written on a page, I've got the whole song, I've got the rhythm going through, whereas other stuff that I didn't grow up with, that isn't a part of my tradition, that doesn't have that, the rhyme, the rhythm, just simply doesn't activate that part of my brain. And there's a kind of a thing of this. This is a book definitely aimed at kind of, Western culture, kind of looking at it's definitely, I think it's a book that's aimed at kind of culturally Western Canadian, North Americans. And it's a book where I feel like we're using the other culture to just kind of look at our own culture more, that rather than getting a lot of insight into other people's culture. But which, it just wasn't that kind of book. I guess the other thing about the book was it was very much, a lot of it was kind of baby play, young child play, and there's a couple of chapters that were like adult play, and I was like, oh wow, that was like, I really found that interesting because, I'm an adult and I don't have kids. And it's like, I found that like, oh, that was cool. I want this book. And it's like, well, okay, then I need to go either write my own book or find my own play. Cause, I found, the games. I'm going to, at the end, I'm going to do a silly game, one of the silly adult games that he did, just because, oh, I enjoyed that. And I like to kind of share that with you. So yeah. This was I really enjoyed this book. At the end of this book, it has a recommended books list. Edward T. Hall, I think, is a fellow I'll look up. Looked like he was going to be an interesting writer, but there's like a whole big list of writers, and there's a bibliography, which I super appreciate. Even in like a lot of like books that are considered like nonfiction books that are considered pop books won't have that at the end of their end of the thing, and it's just like, that's so frustrating. It's just like, it gives you it's like a dead end, where I think the best nonfiction wants to springboard you off into all sorts of other different language. And this book certainly does that. It's a wonderful springboard. So, okay, I've been going on for 10 minutes. Now I'm going to play my silly game, and then I'm going to let you go. So the silly game is you get a random noun, and then you do a story. And it goes, I used to be whatever it is, and I was, but and then you tell a story from it. So that's what I'm going to try now. It's probably not going to work. I'm probably going to fall flat in my face, but it'll be funny. God. Okay, let me try it again because all my random nouns are just, I used to be a map, but I was, but, well, it was annoying. People never could read me correctly, and my street names were mislabeled. I was completely messed up. I was a completely useless map. I kept on sending people down dead ends, and they just at the end of the day, I got crumpled up. I got put at the bottom of a bird cage, and I got pooped on. Yeah, I used to be a map, but now I'm basically just liner for the bottom of a bird cage. More videos later.